Several states are taking stock this morning after wild weather lashed parts of the east coast, while major bushfires burnt in Victoria. A huge storm front forced planes to be diverted from Sydney Airport late yesterday, but it was regional areas that were the hardest hit.
Further south, watch and act warnings remain in place for 2 bushfires in Victoria. We'll get the latest from Victoria with Steph Ferrier at the SES headquarters for us. But first to Miles Holbrook Walk in Sydney. Miles, what's the outlook for the state today after that wild weather last night?
Yeah, it certainly was wild weather, Bridget, but the good news is that most of the rain and thunderstorms will be a matter of the past. Now, this cold front is moving across the state and there will be some isolated showers and thunderstorms across certain parts of the state. It will be fairly spread out, though, and sparse, almost spasmodic in a way, but thankfully there won't be as much of that kind of concerted and concentrated rainfalls that we saw in so many different parts of the state. Right up in Moree, we saw more than 40 mils. That's almost on the Queensland border. Then in the central west of New South Wales, Mudgee copped 34 mils, and then right down in the Snowy Mountains, Thredbo copped 63 mils. But spare a thought for the small town of Carinda. About 93 people call it home. It's in the far west of the state between Burke and Brewarrina, and there we saw significant and wild weather, huge wind gusts and massive rainfalls to the point where we saw some of the buildings in the town actually damaged. The pizza shop, the pub, as well as the general store all had significant damage to them, particularly to their roofs, while we also saw some homes in the town damaged as well. Now, the SES right across the state responded to about 278 incidents. 30 of them remain in the metropolitan area of Sydney and another 40 across the state. They do expect that number to go up, though, because as the sun comes out, people will reckon with the damage caused by this wild weather overnight. Though the good news, as I said right off the top, is that most of this weather is passing and we aren't expecting any more severe thunderstorms across the state today. Bridget?
That is good news. Thanks a lot, Miles. Let's bring in Steph now. Steph, Victoria's had an awful weekend. For people along the coast, what's the latest?
Good morning, Bridget. Yes, there is a fire watch and act warning that remains in place for the Chetwynd Cadnook fire, which is in the far western Wimmera region, and that's already claimed 1 home over the weekend. Now, firefighters say that a fire is still raging through a blue gum plantation in the area and it is not safe to return. And further south, there's also another watch and act, which is for the fire in the Yulong area. That is near Chapel Vale towards the Great Ocean Road, and authorities say that it is now time for people to leave that area. They are hoping to make some inroads into these 2 blazes with milder conditions over the next couple of days, but the hot and windy weather conditions are going to return from Thursday, so they're bracing for that. Meanwhile, we've had several situations across the northeast after wild weather lashed those parts of the state over the weekend. We saw that there are still about 660 people who remain without power in those areas. The SES says it had more than 400 calls for help, and that includes almost 300 for trees down, as well as 100 buildings that were damaged. So the clean-up job is still going to continue apace today after what was a very unpleasant weekend for many Victorians.
It really was, Steph. Thanks very much.
OK, let's get more now from Carinda, one of the regions that was hit hard by yesterday's storms in New South Wales. Walgett Shire Council Mayor Jasen Ramien joins us now from Tamworth in New South Wales. Jasen, very good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning.
How severe was the damage in the areas we're talking about here?
We're sending more crews out this morning. We obviously responded last night along with Essential Energy, SES, Police, RFS and council staff. The significant damage from all reports. We are sending out more crews today to have a look at that and assess the damage. But from all reports, we've got Carinda's in a fair mess. There's been damage to multiple buildings right across the town.
Okay, so really seriously damaged buildings as far as, and including homes, as far as you can see, or as far as what people are telling you?
Yeah, as far as what we're getting, the intel we're getting, there's some homes damaged. But right. The main one of it looks like the main street so the shops. It triggered a lot of fires across the Shire as well last night. So the SES were, the RFS was pretty busy last night with chasing them fires around with the amount of lightning that came through, but definitely the wind and what Carinda experienced late yesterday afternoon was nothing short of a freak storm.
Yeah, we're showing our viewers some pictures now of that storm. It does look particularly wild and, to be honest, terrifying. How big, Jasen, is Carinda?
Carinda's a small community, very resilient community, fabulous little community, home of Carinda Let's Dance Festival, inspired by David Bowie. And it's possibly about 90 people in the town itself. Look, we're looking to activate support for that community. Myself and my General Manager, Megan Dixon, we'll visit the community hopefully tomorrow, but we'll notify the community of a meeting. And so we've also activated a natural disaster deck, and we're seeking that from the state government. So hopefully we'll know more about that in the upcoming days. Yeah, let's hope so. You mentioned the David Bowie Festival. Yes, a great association that town has. He shot the Let's Dance video at the Carinda Hotel. As far as you know, is the hotel okay? From what we're hearing, all buildings have been damaged within the town, but we won't know until we get more staff on site today, council staff, to assess what sort of damage is actually there. Okay, we wish you in your efforts all the best, and of course our thoughts go out to everyone watching us from Carinda this morning as well. Jasen, Ramien, thank you so much. No worries, thank you.
It's been such an anxious weekend.
Yeah, hasn't it? In
New South Wales and in Victoria, so we're thinking of you out there if you've been affected. More news now, and school bullying is high on the agenda as leaders in Queensland and New South Wales promise new plans to tackle the problem. Queensland Premier David Speirs has unveiled a three-pronged strategy that includes anti-bullying programs, employing more behaviour management teachers and strengthening school chaplaincy initiatives. Meanwhile, every school district in New South Wales will convene next month to work on establishing a statewide framework.
A Perth grandmother is facing drug smuggling charges in Tokyo this week, but her family believes she was unwittingly tricked into carrying almost 2 kilograms of meth as part of an online love scam. Donna Nelson's daughters plan to attend her trial in Japan, which has a high conviction rate for drug-related charges.
Japanese troops will deploy to the top end after a deal was struck between Australia, the US and Japan at trilateral talks in the Northern Territory on Sunday. Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles announced the partnership from Darwin's HMAS Coonawarra military base as the world braces for a possible trade war between China and the incoming Trump administration. Japanese soldiers could begin these regular rotations as early as next July.
A grassroots Muslim political movement is targeting safe Labor seats in Western Sydney in protest against the federal government's stance on the Gaza conflict. Hundreds of people attended last night's official launch of the organisation called Muslim Vote at Lidcombe in Sydney's west. Organisers are tapping into pro-Palestine sentiment in the area and say they have the potential to install an independent in the seats of Watson and Blaxland, where Muslim voters account for more than a quarter of the electorate.
South Australian Premier Peter Malinauskas is describing his party's win at the weekend's by-election as a vote of confidence in his government. The by-election in the seat of Black was triggered by the resignation of former Liberal leader David Speirs, who's facing drugs charges.
And a Tasmanian man has completed a half marathon in unusual fashion after pushing his 240-kilogram piano to the top of Hobart's Mt Wellington. Kelvin Smith set out to complete the famous Point to Pinnacle half marathon on Saturday, and yes, 21 hours later he made it to the top. Mr. Smith says the motivation for the strange feat was to raise $40,000 for a local suicide prevention charity. Good on him.